Okay, everyone, we're going to kick the stage back off again. So I'd now like to introduce Melanie Eckle and Rebecca Firth from Missing Maps.
Perfect. Oh, that's not
perfect.
Hello.
Do you want to start? Yeah.
Hello? Oh, perfect. Hi. So yeah, thanks so much everyone for coming. I'm Rebecca and I work with an organization called Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team. And we create open and free maps in OpenStreetMap. And we do that through crowdsourcing volunteers to support remotely and training people in country to contribute local data. And my colleague Melanie will also introduce herself.
Yes, thank you. Welcome also from my side. I'm Melanie, also part of the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, a long-term volunteer, supported with different tasks, and now part of the board of the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team as well, and more supporting on the strategic side of things. And I'm also here in another role as a representative of the Heidelberg Institute for Geoinformation Technology, which is part of the Geoscience research group at Heidelberg University, meaning that we also support the work that Missing Maps is doing, and that's the common thing between the two roles. We are supporting the Missing Maps project through the different kind of work that we're doing, through the work of the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team and also from the research side in Heidelberg as well. So, therefore also happy to talk a little bit about our work here today to you and to explain a little bit more what we're doing and most importantly, how you can become part of this as well. Yeah, Missing Maps, as the name already implies, is about the missing maps of our world. And I think that's not news that a lot of places, and especially the vulnerable places of our world, are oftentimes not covered on any map. And even if the maps are there, they may be not accessible, or they're not accessible in the level of detail or accuracy that we would need them in. And that's a good example of this. We have a map, for example, in this case, that's an area around Bangassou and in DRC. Quite a nice map that we got from MSF. But that's an area where more than 80,000 people live, and you can imagine how hard it is to actually work with this kind of databases, to actually identify people, to enable local development, and to also coordinate and humanitarian activities around these areas. And as I said, nothing new that the maps are missing, and what we're using now to fill these data gaps is also not new actually. We are using OpenStreetMap, and who has heard about OpenStreetMap before? Yes, nice, couple of people already, nice. And that's basically the data source that we're using. A data source or a project that was launched already in 2004 and that has since then been supported by a lot of contributors. We now have more than 5 million that registered. Not all of them contributed, but a lot of people that contributed a lot of data about different places of our world, different kind of topics, and therefore build a data treasure that can be put to use for different kind of purposes. And it's also called the Wikipedia of maps, because like in Wikipedia, you can not create articles, but map data that is then again open and free to use as well. And that's also the great potential that OpenStreetMap brings for humanitarian work, that we can on the one hand free and openly put the data into use, and on the other hand everybody can contribute it. That means that we can address the lack of data and oftentimes the lack of resources that we also have to create data when we need it most.
Perfect. So as Melanie mentioned, one of the most amazing things about using OpenStreetMap in this context is that it's really easy to use and anyone anywhere can contribute. So within Hot and Missing Maps, we have these three goals. The first one is to count everyone in the world on the global map. The second one is to make data accessible and used, which is why it's so important that everything we make is open data, and to engage anyone, anywhere to contribute to the map. So to give a kind of brief overview of that, our sort of progress so far is 168,000 volunteers. That I think is kind of indicative of the fact that the tools, really aren't that difficult to use. It is kind of for us to achieve this kind of mission of creating super hyperlocal data everywhere in the world for DRR, then it's really important that anyone anywhere can contribute to it. And it's really important to us to kind of flip that model from mapping, which used to be this really complicated, quite expensive thing using, proprietary tools, to something that is really open and accessible. we've mapped an area home to 80 million people, but our target is 1 billion by 2021. And we've had 12,000 downloads through HDX, but that's something we're really hoping to increase. So if anyone here is kind of trying to use any sort of geodata for any kind of DRM work, then we'd love to work with you. And as Melanie mentioned, we're all working together in this Missing Maps consortium, which is a slightly unusual project setup. It's not often you see all of these logos of these organizations on the same page. So Missing Maps was started in 2014 with the idea that rather than all of us independently trying to map the world, wouldn't it be great if we could just all do that together and then save a load of time? So the founding organizations along the top were then joined by new members over the past few years, and we're actively looking for new members all the time to join the partnership and really start to kind of create more data and use data in kind of DRM work. So we have a booth actually just over there, so if anyone is interested in kind of learning more about Missing Maps or joining the project, then please come and see us.
Great. And we also included a little bit of insights in how you can now get active. What does a contribution to Missing Maps look like? There are partnerships. That's one good example. And something that you can also start actually right here. If you have your laptop ready, you can basically already contribute by, to our 3-step workflow. The first step being shown here. What you see now here is basically what a lot of mappers all around the world do. To just based on satellite imagery. That's why I also say you can contribute from here, because it doesn't really matter where you are. The only thing that you need is actually access to internet, and then you're basically ready to go. And as you see, it's not that hard either. That's basically you just draw what you say under satellite imagery. In this case, the building footprint. You draw the building footprint. You give it the tag, in our case, building, and this information is then directly available in OpenStreetMap and can be put to use for different kind of applications, and is already valuable information about where people are living, where the populated areas are, and therefore already something that is of great value for a lot of use cases all around the world. And that's something that you can do individually, but what is increasingly done, and if you're interested to come together to support these efforts, there are a lot of mapathons that are organized all around the world, where people come together, work on a project together, learn about the area of interest, learn about the project that they're supporting, and basically have a nice time together. And that's done by a lot of volunteers. That's started by OpenStreetMap contributors, families, friends, whoever is interested in organizing something. And you will also see on our website, the Missing Maps website, you will also find the different mapathons that are happening near you. So if you're interested, also look this up. And that's done by a lot of volunteers, but sorry, but also increasingly done by organizations, meaning that you can also volunteer employee time, which is increasingly done on a bi-monthly basis, annual basis, whatever is useful for the certain company, but of great value, because this maybe 1 or 2 hours of employee time means millions of contributions to the OpenStreetMap, and therefore for the projects that we are supporting. Yes, now, then we come to step 2. So basically what we can do with the satellite imagery is build a base map. But then we don't have the local knowledge. When we're here in Geneva, we cannot know the name of the street or what kind of functionality a building has. And that is then done by our by local communities on the ground, by people that we are working with, by humanitarian actors, whoever, depending on the use case that we're having. And these can then provide information about the name of the road, the building functionality, if it's a hospital, what kind of facilities are offered, everything that is needed in certain activations.
Perfect. So Melanie mentioned the first 2 steps. The third and really important step is people actually using this data to have impact in whatever project they're doing. So this is an example from one of our Missing Maps partners, the Netherlands Red Cross, and their Group 510. And this is kind of basically a way in which they can actually use data created by volunteers anywhere in the world to have an impact in the disaster response and disaster kind of preparation activities that they're doing. So this example here is a really nice kind of simple map that just shows base maps, topography, and a weather forecast to say kind of what levels of vulnerability do different people in this community have, and therefore how can we actually do some early action and kind of try to support than before that disaster happens. And there's also a bunch of other kind of ways to make this much more valuable, which we're also kind of beginning to develop, especially around forecast-based financing, and trying to kind of integrate base maps, maps or kind of predictions of flooding, historical flood extent, things like that, the number of people in the way, and also the kind of livelihoods cost in the way. So things like, you know, how many crops or animals or something are kind of also living in this place that's going to be affected by this disaster, in order to do kind of cash transfers to support families to actually kind of respond to the disaster themselves. So that's one example, very recent example from Cyclone Idai in Mozambique. We're going to share two other really quick examples. This one is from Ramani Haria, which is a project we have in Tanzania, means open map in Swahili. And in this project, we're trying to do open mapping for flood resilience with community members. So really helping community members to actually kind of share their experiences into this map that can then be used to better understand local flooding. And they map historical flooding. So flash floods obviously are kind of one of the most kind of weak databases in the world. And so understanding kind of what flash flooding has been experienced in different areas previously through really, really simple questions. So kind of highly adapting those to local community and trying to make them questions anyone can answer. So not, for example, asking the height of a flood, but asking kind of, you know, was it up to your ankle or your knee or your waist, and using that kind of information to be able to gather some really consistent data, especially in populations where it can be hard to do that. And then also understanding adaptive capacity and community advantages, much of which can also be done through kind of community mapping workshops, where you have kind of a group of different stakeholders and they would all kind of draw that onto a map and kind of identify that collaboratively. And then this final example actually goes back to what I said at the beginning around we really believe that anyone, anywhere can be a mapper, and we really believe that for data to fully support DRR, that has to be the case, because the information we need is really huge in volume and incredibly localized in content. And so this is actually just a photo from a project I'm working on where I live in Peru, where we're trying to engage kind of youth in the region to create maps of the places they live. And while it doesn't necessarily look all that impressive, this was a map created by 15 girls who live in a kind of agricultural community that's continually cut off by landslides, who literally just walked around their community and were able to map all of the roads and then add all of the buildings. So that we can actually now kind of see that community on the map and understand if something, if landslides happen, what impact does that have? How can we kind of respond to that? And so whilst we kind of deliberately showed quite a simple example, but you know, the story is kind of more that it's actually these people who are creating their own map rather than kind of waiting for another organization to kind of come and do that for them. So yeah, just to wrap up, really pleased to have everyone kind of here today, and thanks a lot for listening to us. And our details are here if you want to get in touch again. And we've got a booth just over there, so please come and chat if you're interested in using any of this data or requesting any data or joining the partnership. So yeah, thanks very much, everyone.
And in time, I think we bring it. Yeah. We have 1 minute left for questions. Nice, yeah.
Can you integrate forecasting data into your missing maps so that you can see the impacts of the forecasts on the areas which are going to be affected by the inclement weather?
Yeah. Yep. Okay, you can also go back, yeah.
Yeah, so this would be a really good example of that. We don't have kind of forecasts in the platform itself, but because all the data is kind of, you can extract it and use it in any other system, then it's really easy to use other tools or the tools that you're actually already using to see what impact a forecast would have. So this example really clearly calls out the buildings that are at really high risk, medium risk, low risk, the area that's going to be kind of affected in total. But that's kind of often best not done in OpenStreetMap, but best done in kind of the tools that people are using kind of to model floods regardless. I don't know if you want to say something.
No, I think that was a good. That's exactly what is happening. Yeah, I think that we worked with different partners, so we have different kind of things that we can cover through the OpenStreetMap. But we're closely working together with other organizations to also see what kind of information is needed and how we can, like in this case, visualize it in the best way possible to make it usable.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.